for Q&A. We have a return visit from Guy Sengstock, the creator and founder of Circling, and he has been so kind to come back with us. Thanks, Guy, for being here.
You betcha.
So in the spirit of Circling, just off screen, we had some audio issues, so I'm feeling frustrated from those audio issues, but relieved that Manuel's filling in to fix them, and
Right.
excited to see how this goes.
So thanks for running the physics, right?
Exactly.
It's weird when you have to do physics manually.
We all need to be audio engineers just to run these things.
Right. I mean, every time it's so fun. It's so interesting because I've only been on this a couple of times, and so it's interesting seeing some of your faces because I just get I don't know why, but I look at this thing and somehow I just get this impression of like these kind of hacker people for some reason. Just like
and did
some underground.
Did we meet your expectations or?
I'm not even sure what a hacker is, but we'll see as we go.
Sounds good.
I had a really good time last time.
Yeah, we all enjoyed it, and everyone's back for more. I'm going to keep my questions short. I just wanted to start off. I'm not sure if we talked about this last time, but we talk a lot about ecology of practices and keeping a nice balanced ecology of practices. I just wanted to go over what are your ecology of practices other than circling, of course.
Oh, let's see. I meditate, I would say, between 20 minutes and 3 hours a day. I've been doing that for, let's see, probably over 20 years now, I think. I read philosophy, and for me, reading is reading, especially reading really intense, like philosophy, it's a practice that I don't hear actually talked about as a practice, but I think it's actually been a profound impact on me. Not all reading, but like particular kinds of reading, and I guess we can talk about that more too. Let's see. I do some yoga, although I hate fucking yoga, but I still do it. Let's see, what else do I do? And then I write poetry, which is a kind of practice. I oftentimes go on walks, and I would say there's lots of things that I do that seem to evoke what I would say is like the non-contingent, right? Where it's like I'm doing something, right, in such a way that the world doesn't disclose itself as like a means to an end, but right, like so if I'm teaching, like a lot of times when people teach, they're teaching in order to get the student to pass, or I'm dealing with whatever I'm dealing with in order to get to the next thing. It's like everything is kind of contingent on everything else. But I think that there's another mode, which is getting less and less in the world, which is, where you teach as teaching, right? Where it's like you relate as relating, which is basically about our experience of opening directly to our own being, right? And bringing it into question. So I would say that there's lots of practices that I think are in service of that, if they're not all in service of that. But there are also things that I just find myself doing that evoke that place for me.
So when you say you meditate between 30 minutes and 3 hours, is it just a factor of time? If you have more time in a day, you'll do more, or do you have a certain regimented practice?
It's funny for me with meditation, right? Because I don't know if it's a fair, because I actually like meditation. Like, there's something about meditation that's from the very beginning has been made such a big difference in in my immediate experience and how I see and feel and sense and how things occur that that I just like it. So I wouldn't say I'm disciplined. It's more like I'll put off other things that I should be doing so I can meditate. It's that kind of thing, you know. If it wasn't like that for me, I don't think I would meditate, honestly. If it was like I didn't like it and it was good for me or something like that. I'm not very good at doing things that I'm not that are good for me.
And I know I think you've been following John's course. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So as a long time experienced meditator, has John's lessons, have they changed things for you of how you approach meditation?
Well, I would say, well, first of all, I would say I think there's probably been the most I've sat daily with John's meditation succession is probably like about 5 or 6 days. There's a few runs there. But I would say what I've gotten out of it is actually kind of perspectives on how things link together. Like, for example, when he talked about the metta, right, and then the vipassana, and he said this thing about where he's like, okay, on the in breath, do vipassana, right, or what is the other one? He didn't call it vipassana, but it's like
there's metta on and actually I noted this when you were talking with him. And he corrected too. So there's the metta and the vipassana, and then together it's prajna.
Prajna, yes.
Prajna,
right.
That's what you're talking about.
The prajna, like where like you do the metta on the out breath, and then the prajna or the vipassana on the in breath, and whatever that was, like the linking it together like that, in this sense of like where one goes this place where one's the foreground and then the other one's the background, and then on the inhale the background becomes the foreground. That like penetration at some point to where they both kind of like mutually disclose themselves is it's been a lot of those kinds of moments that I've gotten from the way that John has pulled all this together. That there's like what the technique is that he's teaching and the particular benefits of that, but there's also this other level what I found with what he's doing, which is there's a certain kind of knowledge to get about the interlinking of it. Which makes sense because he's emphasizing an ecology. So that ecological sense is what I've really gotten, I think, out of it, which I just think it's so fun. It's so fun.
I usually call it the zooming in and zooming out.
Yeah.
And well, you said, I think, during that Voices with Vervecki last week that
you're
now seeing that pop up everywhere. So
yeah.
What are some examples, if you, I don't know if you can come up with any off the top of your head, what are some examples of where you're seeing that? Just
yeah. Well, it's funny. It's like it's actually where I'll be experiencing something or reading something that I've read before, experienced before, and all of a sudden I'll just go boop. I'll be like, oh, this is what this is talking about, right? So just this sense of, well, I think we talked about this last time, but Chris and I, who talk a lot, we're in the middle of writing of basically we're going to be co-authoring an anthology with John and a bunch of other people about Dialogos, basically. And he was part of what he was writing was including a transcript of one of our Dialogoses with me, Chris, John, and Jordan. And we both had this experience in reading the text, right, where you could really, what stood out when you read it was how world forming the conversation was. And that you really got this sense in reading it that was different from the sense from being in it. And this is what's really interesting, is that when you read it, it's so clear that the world formation, right, is really what's foregrounded. and the characters are clearly like it occurs like the characters or the interlocutors are really an expression of the world that it forms. However, from inside of it, right, there's this experience of like where the worlding of the conversation, like in order for it to work, it goes background, right? So it's not from inside of it. It's not, you don't have this kind of explicit sense that what I'm saying and the way way we're seeing each other and how things are evoked in the conversation. There's a way where that's really transparent, right? But I think where it bleeds through is actually, I was thinking about like, where does that background figure ground relationship bleed through? And I think it happens in the kind of this electrical, almost trans-rational sense of affinity that you start to share with the other interlocutors, right? This sense of like, oh my God, I fucking love the fact that you exist, right? Like that sense of affinity that comes out. I think what
sounds like you're talking about it like you were in a flow state during that conversation,
yeah,
the three of you together.
yeah,
And from looking at it from the outside, you see what you were all converging on, but it didn't feel that way while you were in it. But
totally. It's not even that it didn't feel that way. It's what was figured, right? The relationship to that was, I think, where that worlding or the context that was created called the dialogue, right? Or the dialogos, right? Where it bled through in the foreground was in the experience of like a transrational sense of affinity, like between the interlocutors, right? But what's fascinating is then when if a certain sense, it's like, and Chris and I disengaged a conversation of looking at like, well, maybe the full breadth of dialogos as a practice really is going into dialogue, then reading the transcript, right? And that, in a certain sense, that like takes it brings it back a little bit more into the propositional, right? So to go back a little bit, just to recap of this sense of, there's dialectic, right, which is kind of bringing in, you could say metaphorically, the wood of making a fire, right, is like the pieces of wood are like the propositions, right? And then when you start to go into dialogue, right, that begins the dialectic. And at some point, the logos catches, the fire catches, just going with the metaphor here, the fire catches, where all of a sudden it becomes more than like the innate logos of those propositions are released, and then you start to go into that flow state, and you start to hear and think and understand things that you couldn't do by yourself, right? And then there's that sense of that when that's recorded and then you read it, it's like the world becomes the foreground, and you really see how that dialogue, how the context actually wrote the characters, right? And then, so I was like, well, Chris, I think maybe what we do, right, is that we go back together as we take this dialogue, and let's do one where we go through and theatrically reread the dialogue to each other, except for we read from, I'll be John and John will be Chris, and right. So we can really kind of highlight that sense of, this world person relationship, this mystery, right? And I was like, well, maybe we make that part of the actual full practice of dialogos. Is that's what you do? Is like you write it down and like you catch it on fire, then you coagulate it back into the propositions, and then you take that up, right, and you bring it back up into the fire, and you just keep going like that, right? I think there's a way that's almost I would imagine is kind of a makes practice and symbol of the way that worlds form, of the way the dialogic, the logos can be fully practiced in that sense. And so, like, for example,
Oh no, I was just saying, would you say that so when we do the practice of dialogos, the exercise you guys have come up with, you John and Jordan, oh,
Jordan and
yeah,
Christopher.
Yeah, for the circling exercises at the beginning help cultivate that sense of affinity, which help create then the flow state in the actual discussion.
Yeah. Yep. Well, what we're going like like for example, the thing that you guys were practicing, we had you guys practice right with the proposition right at the stoa, right? You could say is the dialectic, right? And that's kind of the way that John and with my input and Chris's input and stuff have kind of looked at like, okay, how do we go from making propositions in the dialectic, right? How do we practice like the machinery of doing that in such a way that it naturally goes up into dialogos? And so that's the experiment that we're having right now with it. How by the way, how was that for you?
Oh, that was great. I really enjoyed it, and I kept your protocol, and I really want to start trying to follow it here and start running sessions here where we try to do it ourselves. But I thought we had a really interesting session. I just found it really interesting the way there were four of us, and we each had a related but fairly different take on the virtue that we chose. And it's just it was fascinating just seeing such different perspectives on the same quote unquote thing, although I know the whole point is it's each of these virtues are endlessly discussable, but and a point of bringing in, so we got somewhere we couldn't have got by ourselves because we don't have the other person's perspective, and we don't have their take on it. And so by bringing them all together, we can sort of make realizations.
Right. And I think the idea, I mean, the intention in the idea behind making it like a real structured exercise, right, is so that you can start to develop those perspectives and those skills, right, such that like that if you really do them, you kind of let go of all of it, right, and it just starts to happen on its own. That's the tricky part about in terms of scaling this and making this accessible. How exactly do we do this? So this is our experiment with it.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to experiment. We're doing a lot of experimenting here on the forum with these type of things, so we'll all experiment together. All right, you've got a
how is that just real quick about what you guys are doing here. Have you guys been practicing any of those things? Like what do you guys all do together? What do you hackers?
So
how do the hackers commune with each other?
I'll send you a link to our calendar later. But so we have a whole bunch of activities. So for example, every day we meet at 9:30 during John's meditation session. We come a little early. We do the movement practices together. We set our intentions. We then meditate with John. Then we meet afterwards and we just discuss our sit and we talk about issues related to meditation and share tips. We have the Q&A series, which here you're a part of. We're sort of developing this protocol for group Lectio Divina. So we sort of at least once a week we've been meeting and we're sort of slowly trying it out, and we drafting a protocol, and each time one of us reads, so we take a prose and a poetry, and then the rest talk, reflect back and talk about how it is to be with the person doing the reading during the reading. We do this. We've been doing ecstatic dance parties where we sort of meditative dancing. We've been experimenting with rituals to help cultivate the traits, the serious play that John talks about. So yeah, we have quite a lot going on here. After I could give you a little tour of all the things that we're doing.
Totally. And when you say we, right, like I think I'm just kind of mostly asking, like, when you weren't like actually thinking about what the we is. When you say we, with regard to this, what is the we? Like, what is the relationships that are forming here? Like, does it feel like a normal we, like a we that you have, right? The same way that I don't know, with your family? Is it different? Is it more of something or less of something?
I think it does. For me, at least it is, and I hope maybe we can ask some of the people here.
Yeah, I'm curious.
There's a lot of we here. I mean, I think the fact that Discord allows for video and audio, a lot of this stuff is taking place where we're watching each other, we're seeing each other, so we see the expressions. It's not just like being on Twitter or Facebook where you don't where it's a little more toxic and you don't really think of the other people as real, but we have a real sense of the realness of everyone here. And it's been a few months, but I think relationships are forming. We have a lot of sort of deep sessions where there's a lot of authentic relating, circling type. We don't have actual circling, but
Well, like me, I'm not involved in the formal stuff. My friends came here from another group, and so now I overhear what they're doing with this group. Not
you changed your voice.
I mean, I'm sort of interested, but I'm sort of just here to observe what my friends are doing. Just for an instance of somebody not regular.
Wait, do you guys hear that?
Yeah, this.
Wait, I just had it.
It's other people.
Okay, that was happening for you guys. Okay, cool. Gotcha.
So, hi, I'm Dana. Sorry, Brett, I didn't mean to butt in, but
Dana.
I just wanted to share real quick.
Go ahead.
That for me, at least, this place is like, it's like I've got a room in my house that I stumbled across that I'd never known that was there. I can just open the door and go in and sit with a bunch of really smart and interesting people and have some deep conversations. That's what this place is for me.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
Anyone else want to share? Yeah.
Go ahead, I'll butt in. I've been using Paul Van der Clay server before this one. I came out of a real
Paul, yes.
Yeah, and I came out of a real depression, and I started interacting socially again on Discord, and I got myself out, and I'm with getting myself out, I started getting other people out. So I'm trying to present this positive, generative spirit to a lot of people, and also progress myself into the future.
So this is, would you say, is being in this and interacting in this way, has it been a part of you kind of coming out of your depression?
Yeah, like my issue was that I couldn't articulate a positive worldview, and when I heard Viveki's articulation of agape, that was like, okay, right, that's something I can get behind. And then basically I just ended up practicing it as much as I could, and yeah, here I am.
Yeah, interesting. I'm really fascinated about what this thing is, what it does, right? Like, what I'm in the middle of
Friday night. We've started doing even a Friday night dinner where we all go on the Discord, put our cameras on, we're eating dinner, but sort of having a meal together.
Yeah.
And I would say, just because I'm not interested in this specific subject, I'm interested in who this subject attracts. And I am completely lacking in my on-the-ground direct relationships for that level of conversation, which is why it becomes worth it to me to find it online.
Right.
Yeah, I think I just to sort of highlight what it is that sort of emerged from this technology, right? I think is the best way to phrase it, is there's a bunch of mini communities, right? So this is more like a fostering of communitas in any form. So we've got people, for example, in the text channels that are going through and talking about the religion that is not a religion, right? They've got their little plans and they're off doing their thing. And we've got a bunch of different channels with focused topics and those people. And then we've got a bunch of stuff in the group voice arena where we just have discussions and sit around. We've got a bunch of different voice channels. Sometimes we've had 3 different channels going, right, with different groups building communitas together and discussing different things, and mostly around John's work, hopefully, but sometimes not. Like sometimes you just get silly. Sometimes you do dance parties, right? So there's a lot of things that the technology enables, and we're still experimenting with that to a large degree, and also experiment with John's ecologies of practices. Like as Brett pointed out, we've got group Lectio, and we're thinking about other things we're doing. So John doesn't do the meditations on the weekends, but we do, right? So we're keeping that going to a large degree. Yeah. So that's sort of the sense that I get, is that we're building, the technology builds the ability to go ahead and have communitas in groups with common interests and still mix, right? People coming in and out of channels, and sometimes we have quite a few people in the channels, and usually have a few speakers. I'm probably guilty of speaking the most, unfortunately. And then sometimes, it bounces around, and there's 4 or 5 people bouncing off each other. It gets very interesting, and the topics vary quite a bit. So that's how I see this myself, and that's why I'm here to engage in that and talk to people and figure out where they're at, and if I can help them right out of wherever they're at. Something. I mean, they're here searching for meaning, or in the meaning crisis to some extent, right? Or curious about the topic. Most of them. So yeah.
I call this my I sense gymnasium. That's what it's like for me, an intellectual gymnasium.
It's funny. I'm here. Like, I think what I'm getting from I think in each one of you guys are getting pretty close with each other. Like these are like real relationships that you're forming, and like you're fucking around with each other, and there's a sense of we, and it's just it's really interesting. Like you even said, like I like the way you said that. Like John doesn't do the thing on the weekends, but we do. Right? There's this sense of kind of we forming that's just really interesting. Also, if I think about it, like what's striking me as I'm listening to you too is just this. I think I personally keep getting one of the things that it just keeps kind of getting this at deeper and deeper levels of how much for human beings, it's all about possibility, right? Like, it's like we're always in response to some possibility, right? So, for example, I haven't spent any time thinking about how I can walk through the wall today, right? But because it's just not doable, right? However, if somehow you can have a conversation with me and you can like legitimately have that possibility open up for me, that's all I'll think about it for. Like we think about it for probably a year. Like, how the fuck did they? Okay. So there's this kind of way in which in this very deep way, like if we're always responding, as Heidegger would say, we're always in a response to being in the world, right? And it's always a possibility that is really, even you could say, more primary or more real for us than the actuality. In fact, it's what calls the actual to become the actual for us in relationship to the possible. And so just this kind of sense of where basically what I'm hearing you guys say is that there's some possibility that was evoked when you listened to John or the different people, or however you heard about this, and that and they all came together because you are in response to that possibility. And so what's interesting is that, this is a kind of an interesting thing about technology, is that technology eliminates friction, right? Like, I mean, just think about in order to have this experience with each other, think about all the shit that we didn't have to do in order to have this, right? It's crazy. So like, to be able to have a sense of seeing somebody, awakening a possibility, and then you come, and then all of a sudden you develop relationships in relationship to that horizon, right? And that's more available. That's really cool. I just think that's
It's
cool.
been a pleasant surprise how things are. We didn't quite know how things would turn out when we started, but it's been a nice surprise. I think how well it's going.
Right on.
All right, let me get to some questions though. So Jay doesn't have a mic, so I'm going to read it. So he says, and I think he said, so he says, contacts JVVK, which I think may be John Vervicki, but I'm not sure what VK mean. Express curiosity about if how circling would cope, adapt to a problem being dropped into a circle. This question, what are your general impressions, intuitions on this? Is there any precedent that approximates this? Has any deliberate experiment been ran? If so, what are the findings? If not, what would your design recommendations be for such an experiment? And just so you know, you can see in event text, you can see some of the questions.
Right. Is that person here?
That person is here, but doesn't have a mic. So they can.
Oh, okay, got you. Oh, got you. So I'm imagining what you mean is like, so is it if we were to drop a problem in circling, meaning somebody has a problem that they want solved, or is it the problem that's revealed about circling? Or I want to just make sure I'm getting kind of like what the question's about. What do you read in that question?
I feel like there's an intent, right? Like it's like, oh, let's have this debate subject and then explore the subject.
Yeah, totally. You know, it's interesting. This is why I think Dialogos is actually, there's a way in which there's a linking that's going to be happening, and at least in my mind, right, with circling, right? Because I think that there's a way that's...
Oh, was that Jay?
Did I?
Were you there?
I'm joining through iPhone, so that if interaction benefits the flow, I'm here. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so
that was your question, huh?
Asking.
Correct, Guy.
Yes.
Hey, thank you for being here. Thank you for all the videos.
Oh yeah. Oh, totally. So is that what you mean? Just really quick, is that what you mean about like what? Can we just fucking solve a problem when we circle?
I'm not quite sure because I'm riffing off of John Vervicki himself. I heard him ask that question or contemplate that possibility. I cannot.
Yeah.
I would love to give you the exact reference, which video and timestamp, but I do not know. But I do remember referencing that, and that really sparked my curiosity, as if he was contemplating how to, I don't want to say push the envelope, but maybe redesign or bring elements from circling and from probably from other tools, let's call them, and then see what emerges from there. So I guess the spirit of his question was, what would happen? Just basic curiosity, you know, childish in the best sense. I guess what would happen if I would take a little bit of this and a little bit of that? In this case, just throw a question, a problem into a circle and see how the circle itself responds. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think it's like, so circling proper per se, right, is like basically, so there's an like in practicing circling, one of the things that makes it circling, and this is what I've been writing about actually in this book, and I've been realizing like this actually challenges this. I'm kind of getting why circling isn't psychology, and it actually is like, it actually challenges the notion of sociology, at least in how we understand it. But like, in one of the things that makes circling is it's precisely that where it's the practice of being with what is, right? So, or another way of saying that, a more aspirational way of saying that is we're getting together, and the reason why we're getting together, what we're practicing and getting together, like the come from, the telos, is how deeply or profoundly can we be with what is, right? And what that does is it automatically brings us right into the relationship, right? So and it also highlights why circling exists, because so much of relationships and relating has been about solving problems or fixing or something like that, right? And so circling per se is precisely about like where you can just reveal yourself and what's going on. You can talk about your problems, you can talk about all that stuff, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually just kind of be with the experience of getting your world and being ourselves with your world without intentionally trying to solve the problem, right? And that's incredibly difficult to do. Thus, there's a practice, right? So that you practice not doing that. And so, right. So that's kind of like you could say, you know, the kind of like the literal, like at the deepest level, like what circling is about. Now, what's fascinating to me, right, is the paradox is that when you spend your time like not solving the person's problem, but just getting their world, you end up opening up the source of that problem, what's at stake at the problem, why it matters to them, and then at some point, in so many ways, there's the problem like not only gets solved, but it actually becomes kind of transcendent. It becomes like you get kind of transcendent in a certain way, and it was those experiences that I was experiencing in the beginning of circling, like before it had a name, that I'm like, whatever that is, that thing that knows to restrain from that, even though it's difficult, to not just bite down, but actually just be with the phenomena of being a being with you, right? And exploring all the levels of what has that a problem occur for you. Who are you? Who's the I that like is wedded, who is given by that horizon of that problem, right? And like who am I becoming in relating to you, right? Is that, and you just start to open up that world. I kept having these experiences of where not only was the problem like solved per se, but we started to access a level deeper than any solving of the problem could have made. So that's I just wanted to give some context around that, right? That's the come from with circling.
Do you think part of the reason why that happens is because of your frame shifting the problem? You're just approaching the problem from a different frame, and that helps create insight into the problem solving?
Yeah, I think it's more like what becomes more available is the ground, right, that presupposes the posing of the question, if you say, right? It's like more like kind of revealing the intelligibility that has it show up as a problem, right, that you're contending with, right? It starts to get at those kind of deeper horizons. And in that sense, I think circling is deeply a practice of philosophia, right?
Manuel, you had a question.
Yeah, so the thing I've been obviously walking against on Discord is a whole lot of shadow projection. Yeah.
Wait a minute, you guys have shadows?
Well, sometimes I do, yeah.
Okay.
It's, can be a real hard ass, that one, but yeah, not from my side as much. Like that's not my problem. That's someone else's problem when I project my shadow. But yeah, when someone is projecting a shadow in a conversation, right? Do you have any tips how to deal with it, or like angles of attack, or like avoidance? Like, should you just run away from it? Like, what's your sense about it?
Well, it's interesting because actually you bring this up, because this is something I've been really thinking about, this kind of sense of where this is where relatedness can become very like relationship can become very can lead to individuation in the Jungian sense, right? And it has to do with listening, right? So one of the big things about circling is that what you practice is it's a practice of almost like a deep ontological listening. And one of the things that you noticed about listening that I've noticed is that it's funny. I think how you learn to listen is that when you start to hear yourself not listening, right? Like, it's like I had a teacher that once said, "Is like, what do you got to get right before listening it becomes accessible to you?" He's like, "You don't, right? Until you can hear that you're not listening, like listening is completely sealed from you." And I think that's oftentimes what happens in projection, right? Is like, I don't notice, because that's the thing about projecting. It's like, you can't project really, right? Like, you got, by knowing that you're projecting, it's precisely the experience of not knowing it, right? So I just wanted to present the possibility. I think oftentimes people actually, in learning to listen, is they end up seeing their shadow, right? And as the process of learning how to listen, right? So that's kind of like what's available, I think, in the projection. If you kind of look at it like that, like gives it some distinction about like, well, what's possible in those moments, right? And first of all, I don't think that there's anything you can do about somebody projecting on you. Like, I don't think there's anything that you can do about that. Like, unfortunately, people are free, right? It's one thing I've noticed about the matter is like, you can.
I don't think
yes.
I agree with you. I think I've been I've been building strategies and right, like, because oh man, I'm gonna jump in the dark, but if you if you can,
well, we're talking about the shadow, so we might as well.
Yeah, right. So if you can reflect back to them in a different frame where they're not feeling attacked, right? And then, right, go Socratic on them, right? Like, you have to let them self-generate the solution. I think you can get really far. Right. But that requires a sense of calm, which obviously isn't always there.
Yes.
And also someone who is willingly participating, right? So this needs to be some level of good faith at least. But yeah, so yeah, I've been straggling these waters for a while. I feel like I'm getting good at it, but it's like, right, like when you start dealing with other people's shadows, right, your own one pops up. Right? Like you get annoyed, right, and you get frustrated, like, why are you not listening, right? Like, I told you this 3 times already, and like, but
yeah,
that might be a great place to practice gratitude, Manuel.
Oh man, yeah, I suck at gratitude.
Well, I think it's like, tell me some of the ways actually that so this is something that you've struggled with, and you said you're getting better at it, right, in dealing with it. What is it that's happened inside of you and in those situations that lets you know that you're starting to deal with that differently?
So what's preventing me from acting correctly is my own narcissism, right? Like my annoyance, right? Like, oh, things have to go my way. So when I can get the conversation still kind of going my way, then there's an affordance there, maybe that I can hop into, right? So as long as there's this generative spirit being manifest within the dialogue, right? And you have to make sure that it never gets adversarial, because then you're in the dark. And, Yeah. So when you're able to have the generative spirit, I think people sense it, right? Like it's like, oh, there's something different happening here than normal, and then they get caught in the stream. But yeah, maybe you need to ask pointed questions because I feel like I'm floating here.
Well, I think it's like what I'm hearing you say is like it's like there's something about you owning where you're coming from around it. I think is what I heard, right? Is like, no, I'm here to generate, right? Like I'm in a certain spirit, and so from that, I'm relating to you from that, right?
Yeah, that's the articulation of agape, right? Like it's just the sense of growth. Like I have a really strong moral obligation sense that when I feel that someone's stuck, that I need to do whatever I can to lift them at least a little bit. So yeah.
Right. So there's like kind of a way of being in service in some level, right? Yeah, something higher going on. You know, and I also think I would say that like intercling oftentimes, you know, because that comes up a lot in terms of one of the things that gets in the way of relationships, right? I mean, obviously, it's like one of the main things is that people stop seeing each other, right? And then they still talk to each other while kind of talking to their projections, right? And not really necessarily seeing the other as something beyond their own representations of them, right? And especially if you've got like if you're triggered or there's like a pattern going on, the guy reminds you of your father, and like you know, there's like there's so much to understand and unpack in that. This is why relationships, I think, are such a huge place upon which we grow, right? Working through the things that get in the way of intimacy is almost synonymous with realizing yourself, right? In realizing the other, right? In all of the moreness of the other, right? And the suchness and the moreness of the other is to in some way be able to distinguish, right, your representation of them from them, right? And that's actually a big deal, right? Because it's really easy to confuse those things, especially when there's emotionality. But one of the things I'll notice is that when it starts to occur to me that somebody's talking to me, but they're not really talking to me, right? I'll be like, especially if they're like maybe reactive to me, right, or something like that, and I'll be like, what am I doing right now? Right? I'll just get interested in like, am I like loving you? Am I being mean to you? What am I doing? They're like, oh no, oh you're trying to tell me what to do. Okay, so I'm trying to tell you what to do, right? There's a way where you do it like you genuinely, like who am I to you? Because there is this phenomena of that there's a guy that they're relating to in their head, and that's something that they can share with me about who I am to them, right? And it invites it out into the open, and then we can get interested in that, right? And maybe I mean, a lot of times I find out like, well, actually, yeah, I was a dick. Right, like you weren't just projecting, that was accurate. But there's a way that we can in good faith, right, in the spirit of like, no, I actually want to connect with you. Like, what is going on for you? Like, who am I? Am I telling you what to do? Am I what's happening? You just kind of feel that as I ask that. Like it invites the other person's world out as legitimate, but also you're presupposing that there is a difference between, there can be a difference between how you see me and who I am, right? And so that curiosity invites that in to become part of the relationship and to relate about.
I'm just curious, Guy, as you've done that more and more, has there been more convergence in what you thought the other person's answer would be and what they answered? Like, have you become better at figuring out how you're being perceived by them before they tell you? Does that make sense?
Well, it's interesting. I think I would say I've gotten better at noticing when they're addressing somebody and they're not addressing me, like the sense of feeling that difference, right? So, for example, like a really common thing is like when people go on rants. You know, we all go on rant. We all have our rants, right? Like where we'll be talking and like we'll be addressing something going on right here, and then I'll just start going on some fucking rant, right? And then you're sitting there, and the person's going on a rant, and you're like, "Woo!" They're like not even noticing whether or not I'm listening to them, right? But that's one example of all these subtle ways where like the I-thou connection, you can start to feel when it's there, and you can start to feel when it's less there, and just that, you could say, we'll call that relational proprioception, is something that I think is developed like and articulated a lot more through time. And what's great about that is that just kind of noticing those differences, you don't really have to notice anything else, right? You don't have to know what the projection's about. You don't have to, you could just notice like, oh yeah, it seemed like we just disconnected right there. Is that true? Right? Like what happened for you right in that moment, right? Yeah, did that answer your question, or did I go on a rant?
Yeah, no, I think, well, I'm trying to get a sense of, does the practice that you're doing and asking that question help you figure out, am I being received the way I mean to project myself? And if that makes sense.
Oh, that part. Yeah. Oh, that part. Yeah, totally. Well, it's what's interesting about that one too is you're just you're naming a subtlety of relationship that I think is going on all the time, right? Which is on some level, I have like part of attuning into you is somehow sensing who I am to you, who I think you think I am. So, for example, if like, just imagine if who you thought I was right now to you guys was something that was trying to like destroy the the Discord server, right? Or if you thought that like I hated you and I didn't want to be here, right? If there was a sense in which on some level you were either perceiving that or thinking you perceived that so much regulates or like you're in relationship with that, right? So I think just understanding that like part of attunement, right, into attuning to you is also attuning to a sense in which we're always doing anyways, right? Which is I'm also attuning to the domain of the me that you think I am in this moment. So I think that we're always on some level attuned to that, right? In fact, if you're not, like, if you're not attuned to that, like, that's a big part of coordinating in interaction, because I mean, so much relationship has to do with coordination, right? The kind of back and forth. There's so much communication that goes on there, right? I think I think you're right though. I think that's just become a lot more of a sense of like that I am tuned into who I am with you, and I can like if you wince or something, or if there's a sense where all of a sudden it looked like you weren't trusting me, or all of a sudden I can start to feel that and then relate to it in some level, right? Right. And circling is where you practice being really, really like. You practice, yoga moves of that stuff where you like explicitly say, I'm imagining that you hate me right now. Right? Is that true? Right? Like, and you're like, well, it wasn't really hate. It's just like, I wanted to destroy you for a second there. I was like, oh, okay. But but I think that where it plays out in your daily interactions is, yeah, it's a way of caring for somebody. Right? It's like, it's a way of caring. It's like, are you trusting me? Like, are they trusting me right now? Like, it's a way of tuning into all of the characters in the dialogue, right?
So,
and being able to respond to it.
Do you like? I'm sensing here, and maybe well, I'll just talk about myself, right? Like at a certain point, right? Like you're in the space where you're so attuned, and I'm like worrying if there's like an arrogance, or like you're like 5 levels higher than everybody else, and it's like, well, like is that even healthy, right? Like do you sense that tension somewhere? Or do you think like because
I think it's like, I think my experience has been, the more you could say relationally attuned, it seems to, just my general sense is it seems to afford a lot of you like implicit and obvious humility, right? Like it's I think it's kind of like where you're coming from with it, right? Being able to be really attuned to the moment, right? Part of being attuned is this. Is if you think about it, if you think about like, to be attuned presupposes a tone, right? A tonos, right? In which you're like so. For example, if you were chanting together, right? There's that experience. If you've ever chanted together, there's that experience of like everyone hits the same note, and the whole world, that the whole field gets different, right? Where it's like you're right on everyone's, and you go off a little bit, and the whole thing sounds different. So you're constantly part of attuning, right? Is this sense of like, not like I'm doing something from you, or I'm seeing something that's true about you that isn't already feeling into the relationship. So what's, the thing that it's like, I think the humility comes from that you're tuning into something that's kind of not you, right? But you're finding out what's true. There's a quality of like not manipulating you, coming into relationship with you. But I think your question probably comes from, well, actually, where does your question come from?
Well, oh yeah, right. Well, no, well, I guess it's self-doubt, right? Like, I guess, for example, but now we're going into my shadow again. With my parents, right? It's like I look at them and I see them as kids, right? Like they're so unaware of so many things, and it's like, well, what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
And then I still have to deal with
Yeah.
my own emotions, and so
Totally.
and,
Well,
and
when
then
you,
like
yeah,
I inevitably end up being arrogant because I know everything, right? And I have to express it
yeah,
because I'm an idiot. But yeah.
Well, it's funny, like when you said that, it's funny. I had this sense of like, when you said like, what was it you said? Like they don't know so many things, right? I had this sense of like, on one level, I felt this like, okay, I'm already always irritated with them, right? Like I get that sense of like, I'm already showing up on some level, anticipating them being stupid assholes, and I'm gonna have to, whatever that is, right? But then there's that sense of like, the thing I got curious about is right before that though. There was, before the irritation, what is the experience of, for you, them not knowing? Like, what is that? What's the experience that's hard about that?
Well, because I want to lift them
for
up,
you,
obviously,
in your
right?
experience.
Like I want to.
Oh, you want to lift them up, and you can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
and what's that like?
And then I'm dragging myself down in the process, right? Which is a horrible curse.
Right. So is it like it's usually in talking, right? In talking with you, just like right now, like when you said, I want to lift them up in the process. I just felt this sense of like, oh, like I felt like closer into my own skin or something in that moment, like something innocent. I think it was a response to a what I imagine to be an innocence on your behalf, or a caring,
or naivete even, right? Because I know the wall that's there, and I keep running into it.
Yeah. 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 And you still care.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Right. What's there for you right now?
Well, yeah.
Enjoying your smile.
Yeah, because I'm dealing with an emotion I don't like, so I cover it up with a smile. But yeah.
Yeah. Right. Right.
But yeah, it's loaded. That's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. I think it's kind of like, if we just take that example right there, like, I mean, the thing I would get questioned, like, see, that's, I think the thing, it's like, what I'm really kind of getting is that you care about them, and that caring about them has put you into various like frustrations and probably dilemmas and, like, as you said, walls, and there's been a whole experience of that, right? But the sense of innocence I get, I just notice I have a response, like a heartfelt response to you, and that, like, oh yeah, like, if you didn't care about them, that seems to be what presupposes all the struggle.
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm getting strong enough to carry all the burden, right? That's that's the only solution.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate you sharing all that with us.
That's fine.
Ben, yeah.
Yeah, you really do.
Persephone has a question that she'd like me to read. How do you deal with erotic feelings that arise in yourself or others during circling?
Oh, you just act on them. I'm just kidding.
That took a second.
Well, it depends on, like, you know, I mean, there's so many things to kind of consider in that, obviously, right? Thus the question. And how disclosive you want to be, right? But they're all things that, like, that are, you can share them, right? You can share them, as long as the intention, right, is to share them with the intent of being in relationship with you, right? Like, that's kind of, you could say, is the underlying way of communication. And I think it has to do with, like, right speech, right? Which is where it's what isn't is when we share is oftentimes, I think, when we share in kind of an inauthentic mode, I'm talking or saying whatever I'm saying. I may even be using kind of like authentic speak language, right? But my intention is to actually control some outcome, right? And that what we're trying to practice in circling is really just start to notice what the truth is for you, right? As you see it, is pay attention to that level, right? And in an attuned way, right? Share, disclose what's most real for you, and that when you do that, right, you kind of know that you're doing that because you have no idea what's going to happen after you get done sharing it, right? So, like you can share that, like, I think the thing that would be, I've seen a lot of people where it gets a little bit shadowy is I've seen a lot of people share that kind of stuff, right? In order to make an outcome happen, right? Like, so you really want to, like, really, like, the place that you're coming from is that, like, yeah, in, like, this is what's happening with me, right? And, like, if you want to vulnerably share that and risk that and open that up, like, really without an intention of an outcome, that's the thing that you want to practice.
Well, it makes me wonder, in circling, and you talked about how much you want to disclose, or do you encourage people to disclose the thoughts that may be more inappropriate and normal, that you wouldn't normally disclose in normal conversation, or we sort of have our masks that or if there's a lot we keep in. How do you treat that during your sessions?
Well, it's kind of like it's kind. This is a good way to look at it. Like if we say, right, of all the things that go through my mind, right, with another human being, what are those things that if I say them will invite intimacy, right? Right? It's like, and I think what it is it's those things that if I share them, and I have the experience of you not understanding me and or not accepting me, I will in fact feel pain, right? Like that basically is, I think that's, but if I share them and I feel like that I feel understood and I feel accepted, like I will feel closer to you, right? But if I share that and I risk it and then I feel rejected, I will feel pain. That's the thing about intimacy. It's that's a good that's a good measure, right, of the place that you want to come from or what you're practicing when you're circling. Is it kind of a proactive vulnerability, right? That's the edge, I think. Right, that's really the edge. So sometimes people actually, it's an edge for them to share genuine like love and appreciation for somebody, right? Like, and it's a lot easier for them. It's less risky for them to be critical, right? So it's like for that person, it's that maybe, the thing that's most real, right, is I like you a lot, right? And it's like for you, it's like it may be, yeah, I'm just noticing as you were sharing, I'm don't want to tell you that I like you a lot. Right? It's like that's the practice. Mm-hmm.
Joe, I think you have a question. Read it. Okay, he says, nice picture. I think the painting behind you. Who's your favorite philosopher from that picture and why?
Oh, Socrates. Yeah, Socrates. I think this goes without saying. I think it's like Socrates is this. Well, I'm learning what that is. Actually, I'm learning about that with Socrates. It's like he's. There's a way in which I feel like that Socrates really deeply exemplifies courage, right? And letting go of all support, like all all propositional like supports, all reasons, all reasonable things, right? And courageously dismantles it in such a way that's deeply in relationship, right? Where you really, I think he exemplifies courage, right? And especially courage in relationship, and a kind of humility that I think is deeply Socratic that I admire. Mm-hmm.
I think we've reached. Oh, hold on. Oh, Mark has a question.
Hello, Guy. I was curious about something. So I'm a little bit skeptical about this circling thing, right? It looks a little a little like therapy to me, and I don't like therapy. So I was sort of wondering, the one thing in most of the descriptions that people talk when they talk about circling, it seems like it seems a lot like group therapy without a central topic. And I like what you've been highlighting here because it's given me a better flavor. So maybe I can let go of some of my trepidation around it, right?
Right.
I'm just wondering, what are all the features that aren't group therapy, other than the fact that it's not around one topic, right? It's more around relating, individual relationships to some extent, right? Individual relationships with one person.
Yeah.
So if you could isolate the things that are sort of like in addition to the group therapy aspect, I think that would be helpful for me to sort of let go of my deep skepticism.
Right. Well, I think there's probably some of your skepticism is founded, right? Like, in my opinion, anyways. So I think that it's one of the difficulties has been for me, right? With this and watching it go all over the world, it's just watching it, like a lot of people calling circling what looks to me is like kind of, I don't know, shitty therapy or something, right? But so I think I share some of the skepticism, and I'm personally just doing a lot of work of trying to get that clear. Fundamentally, the reason why circling is in existence is to be with what is in its totality, right? Like, and to be in and to realize it. I think it's ontological, right? It's not. I don't think it's psychology, right? It's about deeply being human together and practicing disclosing more and more and more and more of what is, with that sense of a aspiring to the mystery. And so I think that that's the context of it, right? I think where it's definitely not therapy in the sense that actually precisely because we're not there to get over something or even to improve something, right? Like, the reason why we're practicing is because we think that there's something we're going to get out of it, but it's not like we're working through somebody's issues or that we're analyzing somebody, right? It's more like we're just getting in more and more relationship with what it's like to be together. And I think the kind of the sense of philia, right? That philiatic relationship of where the way I'm responding to you relationally reflects back more than my response, right? That in that movement of like that kind of autopoetic reciprocal opening, right? I think you could say is kind of like really what I think circling in essence really highlights is being with you in such a way that, like, through being with you, like, I encourage you to reveal more of yourself and me to reveal more of myself in a way that increases like a deeper sense of relationship, right? And all the things that come up in the face of that, right? That's really that's how I would say that it's not working through trauma, right? It's not working through your mother issues. It's not any of that stuff. Although, in fact, I was just writing about this actually, because this is what on this paper of that. I understand some of the confusion because a lot of if you look at it, there's groups. It looks like something right out of the human potential movement, right? Like, on some level, the way that it's structured, but the context is what's decisive with it, right? And so I think in a lot of ways, in a very, very deep way, right? For me, it's really about like confronting being, right? Like really asking the question of being, And what is it to be you, and to really like face who we are and how we understand things, and to be with it like more profoundly, and to look reality in the face, and to look at our tragedies and the tragic element of life, and just continually wondrously step into it in more and more profound ways. That's the practice.
Yeah, I see. I mean, maybe I could take a stab at reframing this into my crazy framework, just in case it works.
Great.
So I'm thinking of this in terms of, I like to use John's language for some reason because it's so helpful. So I think of this in terms of it seems to me like you're taking a situation that looks a lot like group therapy, to your point, right? I mean, it sort of looks identical in many ways, right? And instead of confronting issues head on, you're confronting beings. So that's one frame up in the group as they react and interact rather than the thing they're interacting about. Does that sound correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
That's another way. That's definitely another way of saying.
So that's a perspectival switch to the frame of we'll call it beings, right? And then a discussion on the beings and their would it be their felt sense or their felt sense in the moment, maybe something like that, and then that facilitates. I mean, is what would facilitate a good circle, for example. Does that sound accurate?
Yeah, for sure. Well, let me ask you, what is some of the things that, like, in listening to me, what are some of the things that you're hearing that has your skepticism be a little bit relieved?
Oh yeah, that's a good. You picked up on that. Yeah. Well, the more I listen to you, the more the easier it is for me to understand what you're saying, right? Because to some extent, you're just way up here, right? And I'm a humble little down here, right? I'm not. I just it's hard for me to follow some people, a lot of people actually, because I don't read philosophy. I reject all philosophy.
Yeah.
It's just a feature or a bug, depending upon how you look at it. But what I'm getting from you is these little tidbits, like genuine opening and approaching people with an assumption of acceptance. I was like, oh, that's an interesting way to to talk about a problem, right? I mean, that's it in some component. Yeah, I apologize. I do have to go back, right? In some component, that's group therapy, right? Like we're all here together because we have a sex addiction or whatever it is, right? And so we're all going to talk about that, right? That's their version of approaching an assumption with acceptance, right? Because they're all accepting of each other because they know they all have the same problem. And so the interesting thing is, assuming circling works, and like, I mean, you seem pretty popular, so it seems that you've been doing it for a while. There's got to be something there, right? Like ultimately, and so it just seems like once I get once I put it in my terms, right, with the perspectival shift into the frame of being, right, then it starts to make more sense to me in terms of what might actually be happening, right? Because like I know how group therapy works, and clearly that's not how circling works, right? It couldn't be, but circling clearly works. So you're not confronting things head on, and I'm a pragmatist. It's like, what? What do you mean you're not confronting things? Of course you go after things. Just hit them, right? So that's why I think it was difficult for me, sort of, I guess, until now. I like the things like sentence stems. I think that's amazingly useful. In some of the practices, and we've been using that everywhere. It's like, oh, well, let's experiment with some of John's stuff. Oh, we need some sentence stems. Yeah, definitely. We'll just put those in here, right? And some of the authentic relating practices, right? They all sort of seem to tie together for me. So this is making more and more sense about, maybe what you're doing when you're breaking into that frame is you're engendering a greater level, deeper level of communitas. It's not possible any other way.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're not
actually intending to it, right? So one of the things I've noticed about hardly ever happens, right? Is most when we relate or we communicate, it's usually triangular. Almost all of our conversations are. It's like where there's me, there's you, and then there's like what we're talking about, right? And but it's much rare to actually have the about be the thing that we're experiencing right now, the relating that's happening right now. And that seems to be usually that for most people, I think happens. It's just a dimension that's hardly ever touched, right? And when you touch it, it's really interesting. It's immediately alive, right? It's like all I got to do is just like if you're at the if you're with the grocery store clerk, right? And you're sitting there and like just imagine doing the groceries and you're like, oh yeah, being with you, I'm noticing I feel love in my heart. Like, what's it like for you right now? There's this level where you're like, whoa, like you just get this sense of like that would just be inappropriate, right?
Right.
Well, I think what it reveals is how that we just dropped into a level of dimensionality that's a lot closer in, right? And so you could say circling has a lot to do with starting to tolerate you could say the various anxieties and exhilarations and the whole experience of whatever that is that gets wiggy when we start talking about now. That thing that just goes like, oh shit, like there's something about it that's so confronting of our own existence, right? That that when we bring that into the fray, there's just a different dimension that opens up. And so like kind of like getting good, if you will, or proficient of engaging the machinery that can move towards those situations, right? I think is another way of thinking about it.
So okay, to go back to John's framework. Oh boy, this is interesting. So it sounds like you're just forcing people in essence. I hate to use the word forcing, but it's a clumsy way of saying it. But hopefully you understand what I mean. You're forcing people to deal with the participation in the group. So you're forcing people into a perspectival frame with the perspective switch, and that's what's affording them, sort of the clumsy ability in essence to navigate that space, right? And so
right.
and so just to put the finer point on it, although no one here needs it except maybe you, is that to me is part of religio, right? That's what you're exercising as in religio. Maybe John will disagree. I haven't really nailed down his definition of religio, so hopefully he won't up too badly if I have misused it here. But I see this perspectival switch into this participatory way of relating, and that's specifically not therapy. To your point, I mean that's therapy. Therapy is all propositional. Okay.
Yeah. Totally.
I like
totally.
So do you
worth you have it.
Do you want to rephrase the forcing? Like, do you have a better way of articulating that?
Yeah, just tying people up. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Meetings will continue until morale improves.
Yes.
Whatever.
Yes.
Encouraging.
I mean, I'm not sure that's wrong, actually, right? Like, I mean, encouraging might be a better, like, kinder version. But I'm a pragmatist. I don't care about kindness. Yeah.
So we've got a couple more questions, but I just want to check on time. Are you okay for a couple more?
Yeah, I definitely can. Right. I can be.
So Jay, you had another question.
Yeah, thanks. Basically had this sense that I was kind of maybe not representing John Vervaeke's curiosity accurately, so I wanted to invite you to talk to him directly on that topic. What did he mean about dropping a problem into a circle? My sense, maybe I'm wrong, I'd be curious to correct that perception if it's wrong, that it was more about a neutral topic or more of a community level problem, not so much in the therapeutic frame of an individual's issues. With that said, moving forward, now on to my own curiosity. and before doing so, just wanted to practice maybe what, if I'm grasping what at least part of this is about. When Mark said about approaching something with a frame of acceptance, my heart hurt. So there was this sharp pain in my chest. That was really curious. So anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. On to the question itself. So
actually, can we pause for a second?
Yeah.
So sure. Right there, like, so that came into salience for you.
Yeah.
What's interesting about it?
Okay, so that's taking me in another direction, but that's fine. Okay. The physicality of it was the first thing. How sharp. It felt like I had a knife, really a knife deep in my chest. So that was really intense, the physicality of it. As if there's this quality of wounding around acceptance and whatever that is. So yeah.
Right. So is it kind of like, if you feel into this is what I'm doing right now, right? This sensibility.
Yeah.
It was circling this very sensibility here of like, I'm in a relationship with you. You say something, and then I have a response from myself.
Yeah.
That I don't understand totally. But we can then listen to it, right, and follow it all the way down, and then find out what you understood or what the sharp sensation understood, right? About what it was responding to, right?
Right. And go with it instead of trying to do whatever to it. Right. Gotcha.
Yeah. Totally. Cool. So it's like, so for example, is it the sense of like, oh, when you said wounding, I got the sense of like, oh, is it like kind of just the idea that somebody would just just the mentioning of acceptance as a practice highlights where you haven't been accepted?
Maybe.
Is it like that kind of a sense, or?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Maybe. And also just the sense of that's possible. So I don't want to go sigh on this thing, but assume there's inevitably wounding around acceptance or lack thereof and developmental issues. So anyway, I would assume that personally. I don't know. It was just fascinating how physical it was. There was no content in terms of memory.
Exactly.
There was just this physical sensation. As I was trying to formulate my question and think, okay, did I represent John's question? But then I was listening to you guys and something came alive for me. I was like thinking about that, and the body just went in the other direction. Like the mental discourse was, digging into whatever, and then the physicality of it and just that mismatch was fascinating. That's why I brought it up, because I wanted, to put to practice what I was seeing modeled by you, and also in your videos, etc. It's all about what's in the body, what's alive in the moment, regardless of what blah 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 was in the mind.
Yeah, totally. The sense, it's like the ride I went on with you. That was really great. Like it was just alive. For me, it was alive. When you're talking about the curiosity thing, going back to, I think, to the question that was asked about curiosity, that actually, I was like, oh yeah, there's a distinction here, right? And in the difference, and I know John talks about this, and I've noticed this too, is that I think that there's a very, very big difference between curiosity and wonder, right?
Okay.
Like, and that it kind of relates to, like, curiosity is more the problem-solving mode, right? Where if you increase the experience of curiosity, it's not pleasant. Whereas, like with wonder, right? You increase wonder, it's well, if you get too much, you go into you'll lose your grip, right? You'll go into horror, but like, but that sense of that's the thing that I think that we're we're practicing, like, and maybe the virtue, right? I think maybe the virtue, and this is what's fascinating to me about virtues, right? Like, is that you can be a virtue can be the telos that's organizing all of your perceptions and what you're doing and you can find out about it after the fact, right? And I think a lot of what the virtue that's being practiced in circling is, and I talked about this actually, I think last time on the Discord server, is reverence, right? And reverence is really interesting because when you have deep reverence for something, it simultaneously has this. It simultaneously discloses your own finitude, right? There's a humility with reverence, but the humility is really given by the moreness of what's before you, right? So there's this kind of way where you have deep reverence for somebody,
right?
It naturally leads to respect. Now, respect is, you can respect something without having reverence for it. You know, you can follow the rules and all that kind of stuff. But like when you have the respect that comes from reverence, and that has a lot to do with feeling, you know, if you think about it, like tuning into that which is, and it really is from wonder, right? Of like, not like I'm trying to solve this problem so I can get it over with, but what is like what's the mystery here going on, right? Like into tuning to that and tolerating that and opening up to more and more and more of that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I was hearing that, what came up for me was a sense of almost devotion, almost a devotional quality of to be in that presence. And it's not like that submissive quality. Oh, there's a rule I have to submit. No, not at all. It's much more of a pure horizontal quality of relating, not, you know, vertical. The rules I must follow, I must submit. No. So anyway, that was rich. What I wanted to ask is more, maybe less wondering and more curious, given that frame. I would assume there's, you know, diversity in levels of experience in circling, and I'm curious about how does that show up, and is there like any kind of, like in martial arts, for instance, you know, you have different classes for different levels of proficiency. Does that happen in circling? You get like advanced circles and you know, beginner circles, or not so much? Could you speak a little bit about that? If that shows up, and if and how that's dealt with.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's, well, I think what's interesting about circling is, this is another thing that's interesting about like making it in terms of its distinction from something like therapy, is that most of the people that get into circling to practice circling is actually on some level is learning, is what it's become to practice circling is learning how to actually facilitate it. That's what. So imagine like it'd be analogous to going to see your therapist, and how you get over your issues is learning how to become your therapist, right?
Right.
Like, so there is a telos, right? That there are levels and distinctions, and there are kind of, you could say, belts, you know, different versions of belt, because there, it is aspirational, right? There is a sense of aspiration. And what's cool about it, also what's hard about it, right, is that those levels are, it's a skill, so relationship, right? It's like there are skills in relating. However, if you have all those skills and you don't have any capacity to be related, right? In fact, I know people who are are kind of like autistic or something, and they've like read books and stuff, and they say all the right things, but they don't have a capacity, right, to be related, right? So I think it's like when you start to deepen a capacity, right, of, especially for human beings, relatedness, that now we're starting to talk about development, Like those are, like you're starting to talk about like what it is to develop as a person, right? And so in that sense, there's a way in which to become a better circler, right, is synonymous with is synonymous with developing as a human being, right? That's what makes it really, really, I think, awesome and inspiring and also terrifying.
Right. Relational capacity, if that's fair.
Yeah.
The increasing of...
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah. Nice talking with you.
Likewise.
Thanks for feeling the pain in your solar plexus when we talked about acceptance. Yeah.
Like, last question, I think, on our list. Manuel has one more.
Yeah, so I really connected to the becoming your therapist idea. That was like, and also the subject that you guys were on was also something that was on my mind, and I would like to specify the question that he was asking, like, how would you present circling to kids in like a game fashion, or like an aspect of it, maybe, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I think what I found is that when kids are having a childhood that wasn't like mine, they kind of already are, right? Like they can. It's always a challenge to get them to hold their attention on something, but like on some level, there's a way, there's an openness, right? A visceral openness that kids just naturally have, right? That that lack self-consciousness. So there's on one level there's an innocent authenticity that kids have. But I would say just in terms of practice, it's like more of the authentic relating games is probably the best thing with them, right? Because the whole thing with kids, depending on their age, is like, how do you get them to actually pay attention to the thing, right?
Well, so
and just encouraging.
Right. So maybe the context would be with their parents, right? So yeah, right. Like so then there's an adult in the room who supposedly has skills that.
Yeah. So what's the context? Tell me a little bit more about the context of your thought.
Right. So what is in my mind, right? Like I'm with Mark going through John's ideas, and we're trying to see, okay, what does society need? And we came up with this idea to build like a game-ish thing, right? Like a tabletop style of game where we present all of these packaged psychotechnologies to families or whatever, right? Or groups of students or whatever. And then have them participate in these things, and then those things supposedly afford things to them, like opening up and discovering themselves, and then hopefully then they don't get as stuck as I did.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, totally. I have speaking just to that world, I've worked with people with families actually, and the way I've done it is I'll like basically move in with the family for like 2 weeks, and then just, I think I'm relatively got whatever skill that is that can kind of lose the guests in the house feel pretty quickly, right? So like, the families before they know it are just, they're not on their best behavior or something, right? And so just and that's been, I've probably learned more from those experiences than fucking anything, man. Right. So what'll just happen is I'll just like kind of blend into the family, into the background, and then the family will just start to do their family thing. Right. And then I'll be in the corner, right? Like say like the mother comes out, right? And I'm in the corner reading or something. And, you know, the mother comes out and she's kind of already frustrated with her husband and upset with their kids for not appreciating what she's doing, the breakfast that she's about to make, right? Right? And then the kids run past and they don't eat, and then she's frustrated and then does that sulky thing, and then, right? Then an argument starts, and then, you know, the dad comes out and does whatever the, you know, the dynamic kind of like locks and loads, and right before it locks and loads and you could say takes the family dump, if you will, I'll be like, pause, right? Like pause. And everything kind of stops. And the thing I've noticed is that what's amazing about those experiences is that I'll stop the dynamic, right? And then I'll just start to unpack it with them, right? And and there's a lot of permission that you obviously need to have there and stuff. So there's a lot of background with that. But like, you know, then I'll just have them start to communicate their experience, which is they're just genuine feelings. And what starts to happen is at some point, you really kind of feel the family system or the family drama lift, right? Like, and in the family system or the drama is some version of what makes it drama is like it's being dramatic so that it can get the drama to stop, right? That's the whole thing about the drama is like, I'm going to hurt you so you'll stop hurting me, right? That whole iteration of that thing. And so the dynamic will be released, and it reveals like the real tragedy, like the true tragedy, right? Like the pain, the familiar pain of the dynamic is released, but then you see these people. It's so incredible. Like you see these people who are designed to love each other, that have no idea who each other are, right? And that nakedness, right? And that vulnerability of realizing that they have no idea like who each other are, they are, and then beginning to facilitate that conversation, right? Like live. And it seems like with kids that the way I've seen it work anyways is like really, it is really true. Like the parents lead the charge on that, right? The more disclosive and honest and open and, you know, responsible they are about their communication and transparent, right? The kids just respond accordingly. That's the thing I've noticed about with families, having worked with families myself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was real powerful. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, totally.
Okay, I guess I'll end with asking you, what is it like to be you right now, here with us at the end of this conversation?
Let's see. I feel a sense of warmth, and I feel it's funny. I feel a comfortable familiarity with everybody. Like there's just a sense of like, I kind of forgot that we were doing something. Right? I just feel the sense of, I think what I'm responding to is, one is I'm responding to and appreciating like I think it's actually what we talked about at the beginning is like, I really just get the sense of that there's the cosmic wonder. You're all touched with the cosmic wonder, and on some level you're all here. You're all very different, right? But like ultimately you're all here, and I feel that sense of resonance with that, and the sense of your togetherness, and that you guys have really built something here, and there is a we happening here. And so I felt I just feel a certain sense of a discorded homeness. Really great.
Brett, do you mind if I ask a question?
Sure, go ahead.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned a distinction between curiosity and wonder, and you also mentioned Socrates. So in the Socratic dialogue method, I'd like to be a little bit skeptical and challenge you a bit and say that I don't think they're diametrically opposed. I think they're actually interconnected and they feed off each other. I think curiosity is the desire to know or want to know something, whereas wonder is this feeling of awe, which I think comes from when you learn something. And then the reverence is the respect I think you feel once you've encountered that awe. It's like the aftermath, the coming down. Would you agree with that, or?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me. I heard it once, somebody described it the other day. I thought about this ever since, where they said, like, yeah, awe or wonder, right, is that experience where you're in a room and you've been in the same room your whole life, and all of a sudden you push against the wall and there's a door that opens, right? Like that experience of like the thing that you've been inside of your whole life revealed more of itself, and in some sense it's just right. It's been like it's been hidden in plain sight. There's something about wonder that has to do with that sense of, it's not so much, it can be, right, the sense of like discovering something brand new, right? But I think that the way that I'm thinking about it, at least when I'm using it, is that sense of where what is most normal reveals its uncanniness, right? When it reveals its hiddenness, right? Aletheia, right? Because there's that way that Heidegger talks about, right? Truth not as correctness or correlation, right? But in a more primordial sense, the Alethian sense of truth, which is Letheia, was a mythical lake of forgetfulness. So Aletheia is the event of that which was hidden, is the event of its unhiddenness, right? So when people go, like a good place to notice that, when people, like when somebody says the truth and all of a sudden they go, oh, like that sense of like those are like almost like little alethias. I think of them. They're little moments where it's like, oh, like little moments of insight where it's not so much way out in front of you, but it's like further behind, right? The door opens up. You're like, oh, the thing I'm most familiar with just revealed something about itself. And I think one of the things, the wondrous part of that is, I always thought for years that what that highlighted with Aletheia was the emphasis on what's revealed, right? But it's like the more I think about it, the more I'm realizing, like, no, it's unconcealedness, it's unhiddenness. So on one level, it's true, right? Bob goes in the lake of forgetfulness. It's missing that Bob's missing, right? He's totally concealed, and all of a sudden, Bob is revealed. And there's that experience of like, oh my God, Bob! Like, I didn't even know you were. And so it's true. Bob is revealed, but the mood, or what's revealed about being, is that being is concealed, right? That being dwells in its concealment, in its hiddenness, right? And that's the profoundness of that concealment is present. That there's a wonder happening, like in the thing that's most closest to us. So there's that's one of the things of why I think reading Heidegger and circling for me like went real hand in hand in ways that I didn't understand at the time. But I think it has a lot to do with that, what kind of phenomenological, existential hermeneutic phenomenology really does is it tries to start to see what is most most that's most concealed in its nearness, right? What's concealed in its obviousness. And I think circling has a lot to do with that. Of like, okay, what's what's going on right here? What's the thing that like, how come I felt this way? What's and just unpacking that level of things. So that's why I think it's really, really like about fundamentally wonder. But I mean, the thing that you said of like, yeah, that sounds like actually the Socratic dialogues I was thinking about, like where Socrates poses a problem, right? And then he just watches everybody just be confused, and he unhooks all of the problems. And on some level, you're watching this, like, everybody's like getting frustrated, right? Because no one can say the virtue, and they thought that it was true. And then Socrates is like pulls the rug out from underneath them, right? And at the end, there's this quality of no one solved that problem, but there's this thing that's present, right? That like has, as John often highlights this, it's like nothing, we didn't solve that problem. However, everyone wants to have their kids spend more time with Socrates, right? There's this kind of relatedness that's there that through that. So I think I really kind of get what you're saying as well. All right, my face is starting to hurt from
I'd like
talking
to
so much. So
express my gratitude that I'm feeling. To you, Guy, thank you so much for your time and your attention and sharing with us. And I have such gratitude to everyone here and you know, this community and this communitas that's developing, and thankful that so many people were opening up today, and that's great. So thank you so much to everyone.
Yeah,
thank you,
Guy. You're welcome back anytime.
Nice to meet you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Thanks so much. Take care, and thanks, Manuel, for recording.